Hello viewers, welcome to the NIOS studio. I am Nishant Sharma and today we will be talking about lesson 22 of your course, which is internal trade. Before we begin discussing the topics under this chapter, a quick look at the topics which we'll be covering in this video. We'll be talking about the internal trade and the types of internal trade, which is the wholesale trade and the retail trade. We will also talk about the types of retail trade and the large scale retailing. Then we will also talk about middlemen and the recent trends in distribution. So to begin with, internal trade implies the trade which takes place within the geographical boundaries or the domestic territory of the country. So when buying and selling of goods or services takes place within the same city, town or village, or from one city, town or village to another, or from one state to another state, but within the same territory. It is called internal trade. And the payment for this trade is settled through the currency of the home country, which in our case is rupee. Internal trade is dependent upon a distribution network comprising of middlemen and other agencies. If we classify internal trade, it can broadly be classified into two parts, the wholesale trade and the retail trade. Wholesale trade involves larger quantities sold by wholesalers to the retailers, and retail trade involves smaller quantities sold by the retailers to the ultimate consumers. If we talk of the functions of the wholesalers, they indulge into assembling, grading and packaging of the goods, then transporting and warehousing of the commodities. They also bear the risk of the trade, apart from providing market information and eventually affecting or impacting the selling of the goods. There are certain services which are provided by the wholesalers to the manufacturers and to the retailers. When it comes to services provided to the manufacturers, the wholesalers help the manufacturers in terms of buying bulk commodities from them and also serve as a warehousing facility for the manufacturers. In terms of providing services to the retailers, the wholesalers ensures a regular supply of goods to the retailers. They also provide financial help by providing them the goods on credit basis. Then the advertisement by the wholesalers help the retailers to find further clientele. They also provide market information and up to a great extent risk protection. The way wholesalers bridge the gap between the manufacturers and the retailers bridge the gap by providing services to the consumers and to the wholesalers. The retailers ensure a regular supply of goods and services to the consumers at convenient location with wider choices, and some of the retailers also provide the facility of home delivery. Retailers also help the consumers by telling them how to use the products. And when it comes to providing services to the wholesalers, the retailers, because they are in direct touch with the consumers, can gather market information and provide that information back to the wholesalers, which can be transmitted to the manufacturers. They also help in distribution of the commodities coming from the manufacturers via wholesalers to the ultimate consumers. They also support selling of the new products. Wholesalers and retailers are together called the middlemen in the chain of distribution, because producers, when produce the goods, they need certain middlemen in terms of wholesalers and retailers who will help the manufacturer or the producer to sell or deliver the goods to the ultimate consumers. Now, while discussing them as retailer and as wholesalers in terms of middlemen, sometimes they come under the scanner as to their role. Are they actually desirable in the chain of distribution? Because people are of the mind that when producer produces a certain commodity, for example, if it is produced at rupees 5, and when it is transferred to the wholesaler, producer adds a profit margin of its own, and the commodity of rupees 5 now becomes a commodity of rupees 6. When wholesaler transfers this commodity to the retailer, he adds a profit margin of his own, and when the retailer further transfers the commodity, he also adds a profit margin of his own, and the commodity initially costing rupees 5 is eventually sold off to the consumer for rupees 8.50, thereby increasing the cost for the ultimate consumer of more than 50%. In order to better understand the wholesale trade and the retail trade, we have to look at the difference between the wholesaler and the retailer on certain parameters. So if we talk of number of items wholesaler and the retailer deals in, So the items which are dealt in by the wholesalers are actually very few items, whereas the retailers deal in a variety of items of smaller quantities. When we talk of source of purchase of wholesaler, the product comes directly from the manufacturers, but in case of retailers, the products comes either from the wholesalers or sometimes in exceptional cases from producers as well. The main activity of the wholesaler involves selling goods to reseller for the purpose of further resale, while the main activity of the retailer is to sell goods for the final consumption of the ultimate consumers. If we talk of the amount of capital invested, wholesaler, because he or she indulges into bulk buying, require larger capital to be invested, contrary to the smaller capital requirement of a retailer. Then nature of relationship with the producers and the consumers. Wholesalers establish a direct link between the retailer and the manufacturer. On the other hand, retailers develop a direct link between the consumers and the wholesalers of the commodity. Location wise, wholesalers are not very easily approachable because they are not available at the doorstep. On the other hand, retailers are available at more places in the residential areas, therefore are easily accessible. When it comes to display of goods, wholesalers are under no obligation to display the goods they are willing to sell or are actually selling, but retailers are required to display the products they are willing to sell or are actually selling. Then next we have is the types of retail trade, which can broadly be of two types. We can either have itinerant retailing or there can be fixed shop retailing. By itinerant retailing, we mean a facility of retailing wherein no fixed shops are maintained and the commodities are sold by retailers as peddlers or in terms of hawkers. The commodities